Hello from Sebring International Raceway in the heart of the Everglades in Central Florida. This is Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS, qualifying for rounds 3 and 4 of the 2024 season. My name is Ryan Marine. Calvin Fish, a former winner of the 12-hour here at Sebring, is alongside. It's Amanda Busick down in the pit lane for us as we get ready to go to start the second weekend of the season. It was about a month ago, 3,000 miles west of here, that the season started out at Sonoma Raceway, but the teams have made the trek to Central Florida, and Calvin, they've arrived at one of the iconic circuits in the country.
It really is a special place. I mean, the tradition here, the circuit itself, the track surface, we talk about respect the bumps here, and never change Sebring, because that's what's so unique about it, and the challenges for these drivers and these teams to make these tires, these Pirelli P0, stick to that surface. There's a variety of surfaces around here. Just under a mile of the concrete runways remain here during this 3 3/4 mile circuit. And conditions this morning, though, are going to be pretty good. It's relatively mild for Sebring in the Central Florida, mid-70s ambient, and the track's going to be in the best form that it's been all day long. Several
changes to the entry list. If you were with us in Sonoma, you'll notice a few different cars, a few that have joined, a few that have fallen away. The two cars you just saw most recently, that Corvette from DXDT Corvette Racing, much anticipated. It's here on the grid. And then a pleasant surprise, RS1, which had a brilliant season a year ago with Stephen McAleer and Eric Filgaris. They're here with a Porsche for Trent Hinman and Spencer Pumpelly. That's another Pro Class entry here this weekend.
Yeah, it's a pretty stacked lineup too, Spencer being a silver. So they're going to be tough to beat. They've been towards the top of the timesheets all week long, so see what they can perform here in qualifying. Starting position is important, not super important here at Sebring. There are some good overtaking opportunities in the race here this afternoon. We'll see how it plays out.
And with that Corvette, it is the first factory-backed GT3 effort from Chevrolet, and it's super cool to have them here. The announcement came last October at the Indy 8 Hour that DXDT would be the representative team for GM in SRO America. We had to wait a little while. They ran the old Mercedes back at Sonoma, but they've been getting this program lined up. They've done some testing here at Sebring, and I think they're pretty keen to show just how good this package can be.
Yeah, they're very excited about this new platform from Chevrolet. I mean, talking to the team there and the engineers, they said it's like a little mini prototype wrapped in a GT skin. So Brian Sillers, Scott Smithson actually did some time in the GM driver-in-loop system in Corvette in Charlotte. So they think they're ready to go, but it's early days, lots to learn, and you never know with a car set up. They can make a change in direction, and it's the wrong way, and then you're on the back foot a little bit. So early days, and the excitement will continue to build by the time we get to Coda in a couple of weeks with a second entry for Tommy Milner, Corvette Racing factory driver, and young Alec Udell. Great to see Alec back on our grid as well.
And it's a great story for sure. I talked to Alec in Long Beach, and he's got a great poker face because he did not let it slip that he had this waiting in the wings. But super cool, really excited for that additional entry, and a Pro Class entry at that, looking ahead to Circuit of the Americas. That'll be in just a few weeks' time. But we've been talking about DXDT Corvette Racing. Let's get more with Amanda Busick.
Yeah, Ryan, and we teased it in Sonoma that the American Horsepower was going to be joining us on track this season, and here we are already in Sebring, and Brian Sellers is going to be one of the drivers in that Corvette. How's it taking to Sebring?
It's been great so far. It's obviously a big learning curve, one manufacturer to another, but I think the transition has been pretty good. Our guys were prepared for it, but you know, there's obviously a lot of things you have to run through, different balances between the cars, different progressions and changes you make. So, you know, we're very happy with how it's gone so far, but we're under no illusions that we have a lot to learn.
Expectations on the weekend, what would look like success for this team?
A good execution. I mean, it's hard to say what you want results-wise. Nothing quite like American Power. It's hard to say results-wise because we just don't know. We don't know where we stack up yet, but for us, we need to execute well. We need to make sure that we can control everything that is in our control, and we do that to the best of our ability. I mean, for sure sounds cliche to say that, but it is the truth and where we're at right now.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks.
This car, or its sister car really, made its race debut at the 24 Hours of Daytona earlier this year. 5.5-liter V8, naturally aspirated, of course. And in fact, the history of this car, if you go back to the early days of testing, it did its rollout test here in Sebring in December of 2022. So it's been quite the build-up and much anticipated. I think everyone around the world excited about a pure customer car from GM and Corvette Racing. We've seen them have so much success as factory efforts. It's been pretty infrequent that we've seen Corvettes in customer hands around the world. It has happened, but only on few occasions. But this will be a true GT3 program with all the bells and whistles that accompany it.
Yeah, really a change of philosophy from GM Racing in terms of having customer racing programs, and I think it's great that it allows us to see more of these models out on the racetrack, and they're given great support to talking to every team who's affiliated with GM with this customer racing program, said they are doing it right. For example, we talked about Sellers and Smithson being in that driver and loop system. That's never happened before with the customer racing team, so this is a unique sort of trajectory that we're on, and I think the car's got tremendous potential. It's early days, as Brian just alluded to, but it's exciting. It's going to be great to see those guys progress through this season.
And as ever, racing, such a great showcase for the road-going variants of this car, and all of these cars, in fact, here in GT3 Racing, which have so many links to their road-going counterparts. In the case of this Corvette, that engine I talked about, 5.5 liters, it's derived from the production Z06, and 70% of the parts in this car shared between the race and road-going variants as far as the powertrain is concerned. So really, really cool stuff as we are anticipating seeing just what that new car and the DXDT Corvette Racing team can do. Here is George Kurtz. Riley CrowdStrike machine shares that car, of course, with Colin Brown, and he's had some success here at Sebring in the past.
He has, and they're the championship leaders, sweeping both rounds at Sonoma, and George has already been out on track with a similar car, not the same car, but he runs in GT America. They qualified a little bit earlier this morning. He put that car on the pole. So there's a handful of these drivers that are doing double duty, at least in terms of the practice and testing and everything. So they should be up to speed relatively quickly, including Scott Smithson, who we just focused on with the 08. He qualified that car 5th in GTA this morning.
George Kurtz, a former class winner in the 12-hour. That was back in 2021. We've got so accustomed to seeing him in these Mercedes-AMG GT3s over the years. And this partnership he's formed with Colin Brown and then the Riley team after a few years racing with the XDT, actually, in previous seasons. But they seem to be going from strength to strength year upon year. They just get better and better.
They do. It's been a great partnership, and really have found some strong form, and each year they come back with a similar car, and so the notebook increases. They certainly don't backpedal. They seem to keep moving forward, and that's what it's going to take. It's a very competitive class that we have here this year, but they got after a flying start by being the points leaders after taking maximum points out in California.
Reigning champions, of course, within the Pro-Am class, George Kurtz and Colin Brown. We'll see Colin in qualifying 2 a little bit later on. ST Racing is the team that fields this BMW and another one. It's a 2-car operation here in 2024. This one driven by Varun Choksi and Bill Auberlen. I know ST Racing is thrilled to have the BMW legend under their tent. So much experience for them to draw upon.
Yeah, it's a great partnership, and Bill is very impressed with young Varun. Adapted to this GT3 platform immediately. They did a test together. They got associated late summer and discussed putting a program together for Bill and Varun. Did a test at Buttonwell. It went great, and then they put the program together with John Miller and ST Racing, and had a solid start, a couple of runner-up finishes out in California, and things are looking bright for that team in terms of the championship this year.
This has been one of the fastest cars here this weekend with this man behind the wheel, Philip Ellis. And if you were with us in Sonoma, you know that this team that now goes by Regulator Racing, they operate out of the same shop as DXDT Corvette Racing, but it's its own independent branch. Philip Ellis and Jeff Burton electing to do strategically something that the rest of the field did not. It's a new rule this year. Teams are able to nominate driver 1 and driver 2 in the lineup. Previously, driver 1 was always the less experienced of the drivers in the driver lineups in the Pro-Am class. That's not the case anymore. So what we see this team do is put their hot shoe, Phil Ellis, in the car, for race 1. He built a big lead, and then it was Jeff Burton's job to bring it home. And then the roles were flipped the next day, and they came away with a pair of 6th-place finishes in those races at Sonoma, and quite possibly could have had a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think it's a great roll of the dice, because effectively what they're looking for is for Ellis to put in a really strong performance here. We'd anticipate him being on the pole in this session. He won the Sebring 12 hour this year, so he's got great experience at this racetrack. Then they hope for basically a green flag run in race 1. Allow Philip Ellis to get up the field, get out in front, get a good start, get a big cushion for then Jeff Byrne to try and maintain or control to get to the checkered flag. And conversely for race 2, they'll have Jeff qualify. He's going to be up against the pros. He'll be towards the back end of the field. Then if they get a yellow, suddenly you could have Philip Ellis going up against the AMs for the second half of race 2. So it could work.
It certainly could, and we'll see how it plays out over the course of this weekend. Ellis on provisional pole right now with the fastest lap we've seen all weekend at a 1:59.6. The lap he's on right now is shaping up to be even quicker as we keep an eye on those times halfway through the session here in qualifying 1. Let's get more from the pits with Amanda.
Well, as you guys were having that conversation on Regulator Racing, I was talking to Jeff Burton, and it was announced that that was a track record for Philip Ellis on his lap. As you said, he's increasing there. But I talked to Jeff about the decision to maintain that strategy here again this weekend in Sebring. He wasn't necessarily happy with the results at Sonoma, but said his ego wouldn't let him do any other thing here this weekend. They wanted to try it again. I asked him how he felt on race 2, being in that position of chasing some of those pro drivers out there, and he said, no, I really got to step up my game. I need to make sure that I'm, right there in the pack to make this strategy work.
It's a really good point. I talked to Jeff also, and his comment to me was, ultimately, there was limited running in the build-up to the races at Sonoma. He never felt totally comfortable, totally ready to go. There was a lot more testing and practice here this weekend, and he thinks he's better positioned to do the job when the time comes, as Ellis just reset the track record down to a 1:59.2, and by all appearances, he's still pushing here with 7 minutes to go in qualifying 1.
He is pushing. I noticed, I believe, a little hesitancy on the entry to turn 1. Looked like he had to catch the car a little bit on entry. We'll wait and see what the first sector comes up with, but he is absolutely flying as we anticipated. AMG factory pilot, of course, and just knows this car like the back of his hand. So he is totally comfortable in terms of pushing it and finding the threshold of grip here. And he's actually contradicted me. He's gone fastest again in sector 1, purple. So
impressive for Philip Ellis, provisionally on the Rova pole position overall, and also within the Pro-Am class. The Rova pole in the Pro class right now would go to Spencer Pumpelly in his debut with this RS1 team in this championship, at least. Really cool lineup, as we talked about, joining Trent Hidman, former champion in this series. We'll see him in qualifying 2. Then it's Luca Mars for Racer's Edge, the local team from not too far away here in Florida. Choxy and Adelson completing the rest of the top 5. Speaking of Spencer Pumpelly, here he is for RS1. This is the only race that we're sure we'll see Spencer in this year for this team. It'll be young Jake Peterson, who made his series debut in the Indy 8-hour last October, who's slated to drive the car alongside Hidman for the bulk of the season. And there are a few other conflicts with Jake's existing schedule. It's been for Roche West there in Sunset Bend. Looks like no harm, no foul. But to put a bow on the Pumpelly story, I know the team would love to have Spencer in that car. That's what they're hoping to do for those conflicting races the rest of the way, but nothing is guaranteed at this point. However, Spencer certainly helping his cause with a really strong run to at least provisional pole within the Pro-Am class.
yeah, and he's kind of almost become the super sub, getting some great opportunities this year in a couple of championships. So much experience. I think he's approaching age 50. I think he's 49 now, so still got tremendous speed and a great asset for any team you draft him in. And he's kind of cut and paste in terms of his pace from year to year. He doesn't seem to drop off. Still got tremendous passion for his sport. Incredibly busy, so I've got so few days at home with his coaching responsibilities, running now in a couple of championships, admittedly on a part-time basis, but still stays very, very busy, as he should.
This car is on a pretty good lap. George Kurtz currently down in 9th, had a personal best middle sector, and did turn in a decent lap at a 2:02.1, but does not improve. Ultimately still down in 9th. That's a bit of a surprise, especially when you see the Mercedes of Ellis, albeit in the hands of a pro, has been the pace-setting car here in qualifying 1. On board with Luca Mars. Every lap so beneficial for this driver and this team, because this deal came together very late in the going ahead of Sonoma. No preseason testing. The budget isn't there to do any testing in between events this year, so they're doing all their learning at the racetrack. And Luca Mars has a little experience in this car as a former member of the HPD, as it was then known, GT3 Academy. But Zach Veach has next to no experience in that car, and so they'll be drinking from the fire hose, at least for the first few rounds of the season.
He had a quick chat with Luca yesterday, and he says he's a lot more comfortable coming here. We talked about the race at Sonoma and the issues we had with the track, where we lost essentially the majority of the lead-up time and the practice time, so it put a lot of people on the back foot, particularly Racer's Edge with their program coming together so late. But Luca said, I'm a lot more familiar with Sebring. I know the racetrack well. And they've certainly been towards the higher end of the timesheets throughout the practice sessions here this weekend.
Let's keep an eye on George Kurtz here in the waning minutes of qualifying 1. Through 2 sectors, he's 1.5 seconds off of Philip Ellis's pace. But compared to some of the other bronze-rated drivers, he's right there in the mix.
Yeah, he could move up a little bit here. He only needs to find about 3/10 to move up 2 spots. So we'll see what George can pull out. And normally he does. He's one of those drivers that'll just keep digging and grinding, and sometimes able to perfect his lap towards the end of the session.
That tricky turn 17. One more time, blitzing to the start-finish line. Let's check the time. Sure enough, a new personal best at 2:01.7. And that moves George Kurtz up to 3rd in class, 7th overall, just nipping at the heels of Samantha Tan.
Yeah, those were those couple of spots I suspected he may have been able to gain. See if he can find any more. Got to find a nice chunk to move up any further. Samantha Tan has a best lap about 6/10 faster, so I'm not sure if George has got that in hand to find before the end of the session. But Samantha doing a great job for ST Racing aboard the 38 machine. She's currently 6th overall and 2nd in the Pro-Am class, led by Philip Ellis, of course.
Here is Elias Sabo, currently 12th out of the 12, but on his best lap yet. This Flying Lizard team, Elias told me, just hasn't quite got to grips with this car at this track. They've had the benefit of having an Aston Martin factory driver, Enrique Chavez here, who's been helping to test the sister car that Jason Bell will run in GT America later on today. And that's provided a nice baseline for them, helped to validate what Andy Lee, Elias Sabo's teammate, has been telling him. But just as a group, they haven't quite come to grips with the car, and Elias told me candidly yesterday, look, I think I'll probably be starting towards the back, and it's tough to swallow, but we have to realize it's my first year of GT3 racing, the team's first year working with this car. We're still learning so much at this stage in the program.
Yeah, you have to be patient. I mean, racer's instinct, you want results immediately, but you have to put it all into the big picture, and learning a GT3 car, it's a big step up, certainly for Elias with his overall race experience, and even for Andy Lee, who's a tremendous talent. It's going to take a little bit of time.
How many times have we seen this from George Kurtz, where he just slowly but steadily builds the speed throughout a qualifying session? It looks like he's doing it again. And credit to the Pirelli P0s. They're staying under these cars here this weekend. Kurtz to the line, and he does jump Samantha Tan.
6/10 in 1 lap.
Edges the Canadian by just 34 thousandths of a second. That's good enough for 2nd in the Pro-Am class, but perhaps most importantly, it is 1st on this strategy of teams that are electing to start their non-professional driver in race 1 of the weekend.
Smithson crosses line about 3/10 off his previous best. That was a 2:02.2. Currently sits 9th and 5th in Pro-Am at a 2:01.9, which is about half a second faster than he went this morning in GTA qualifying. So he's gradually getting to grips. Track will not be as quick as it maybe was about an hour or so ago when they did GTA qualifying. So this is a nice solid progression. That's what you want to see, just keep nudging the post a little bit higher.
And he's still on a flyer here. The only car that has taken the checkered flag on track is Kyle Washington, who is currently 10th on the leaderboard. So if Smithson wants to push, he still can, but it does appear he's backed out of it at this stage. Who else is still on track? Kurtz is. Sabo and Schwest appear to both be on track as well, but no one showing any pace that would indicate that they're going to make any changes to the standings, and it looks like the grid is more or less set for the first of two races this weekend. Race 1 coming up later today with Phil Ellis on the Rover pole position with a track record lap of a 1:59.217. I'm curious though, will that track record stand in qualifying 2 with so many of the pros getting set to go to qualify here in just a few minutes?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see who can nip at the heels of that time. I mean, Philip is obviously regarded as one of the fastest drivers in our paddock, and the team's doing a great job. Kind of ironic that we're seeing kind of the strongest performance from that group here this year with Philip coming on board. He's brought over an engineer from Europe, and I think they've certainly moved the needle a little bit in terms of their setups on that Mercedes.
Yeah, without a doubt, that team has taken a big step forward, and even at Sonoma, this car, it wasn't ready yet, so Sellers and Smithson, they were in a Mercedes and maybe had their best results running for Mercedes over the past few years. In fact, I saw Sellers in the airport after that event, and he said, isn't it something?
Bittersweet, right?
We're about to make the switch, and we really feel like we've unlocked this car, but it was tempered by the fact that they are so excited about the Corvette and all the promise that it has. That was Colin Brown and George Kurtz debriefing as George hops out of his machine. Provisional results from qualifying 1. Phil Ellis, Jeff Burton on the Rover pole position. They'll lead the field to green. Very similar circumstances to what we saw in Sonoma, where they were able to build that big lead. The race ran more or less as they wanted it to, just the one yellow early.
Had that early yellow, which sort of like curtailed the gap that Philip could have potentially gotten out to. But nonetheless, it's there. I mean, I think Jeff's kind of said it. He needs to step up a little bit. That shortened weekend really hurt his progress throughout Sonoma and didn't quite have the pace we anticipated.
We'll get a sense for what kind of pace he has as we look ahead to qualifying 2 here in just a few moments. Pompelli, Hidman, Mars, and Veach. They'll be the top 3 for the start of race number 1. Let's go down to the pits.
And the Rover pole position for race number 1 here today will go to Philip Ellis in this Regulator Racing Mercedes. And man, 0.8 of a second that you led there. You set the track record, and then you reset the track record. Why does this Mercedes work so well here at Sebring?
I think I just have a great team behind me to give me a good car, so they make it very easy for me to do it. But yeah, in all honesty, it's a bit easier in this session, of course, to be in front. So I hope Jeff does well now as well in this session. It'll be interesting how the other guys do in Quali 2, the other pros. So I wouldn't celebrate the record too soon. But of course, it's a nice thing to have in the pocket for now. Again, I can't thank the team enough. They made it easy for me.
I heard your team call you a beast. What do you make of that description?
I think they just mean that I eat too much.
Congratulations, Phil.
Thank you very much.
It's been a big year for Philip Ellis already, with class wins at the 24 Hours of Daytona and here at Sebring in the 12-hour back in March. So without a doubt, he's someone who knows his way around this place. But you heard him say it. He's right about the fact that, in this session, he should be on pole. It's just a matter of by how much.
Yeah, and I think he'll be curious to see what the pace is of the other pros to see how they can potentially stack up and look at their strategy moving forward for the day.
What a place here at Sebring, a challenge for sure, and we'll take a look back at highlights from that first qualifying session. Heavy traffic, of course, everyone trying to leave the pits at the same time, or at least many teams electing to do so. This was Philip Ellis using all the racetrack there in Sunset Bend.
Yeah, you have to be a brave boy through that corner. Rock and rolls through there with the bumps. Just look at the suspension. This is Roche West getting a little bit wrong. Quick spin right in front of Luca Mars. So I'm not sure if that cost Luca anything if he was on a hot lap at that point midway through the session.
George Kurtz, the star of the show, late in the going at least, as he steadily built the pace. Ultimately ended up second in the Pro-Am class, but that was for race 1. This is qualifying 2. This will set the grid for race 2, which is on the docket tomorrow. And in the Pro-Am cars, barring the Regulator Racing Mercedes, we see all the pros installed, and even in the Pro class, this is where the gold and platinum graded drivers will take to the wheel, because here in Fanatec GT World Challenge America, the Pro class does mandate one silver graded driver in the starting lineup for each of those entries. And we're up to 4 here this weekend with the addition of the car from RS1. We'll see Trent Hidman in that one here shortly. And this is Jeff Burton. This is the car that will start on pole for race 1. Jeff Burton now not amongst his peers, but this is the strategy that this Regulator Racing team has elected to go with. They think it gives them their best chance of a remarkable result.
Yeah, and it's got to be a bit of a weird dynamic for Jeff, because you're kind of off on your own little island and you're just thinking about big picture and how it's all going to come together versus being in the thick of a battle. And I think Jeff loves to race, and this is really taking him out of that dynamic, because if things go according to plan, he's not going to be able to fight with the battle in race 2 from where he'll qualify here right now. And in race 1, he's going to hopefully have to defend a big lead and wait for the chasing pros to come get him. So it's a bit of a strange one versus just getting out there, middle of the pack, dicing it out, and going for a result.
How much mental discipline does it take?
A lot. It's very difficult, and I think that's really what he's got to work on, and just have a clear vision of how this is going to play out. Listen to your team. Let them talk you through how you're doing, if you need to find a little bit more, if you need to maintain. But the big thing is he has to have a little bit more pace here comparatively to the field than he had at Sonoma, and I think he could do that.
In some respects, it's good training. If the goal is to get to some of the long-distance races, the Indy 8-hour here in this championship, or 24 hours of Spa, Sebring, Daytona, Le Mans, whatever, because at times, as the amateur, you are going to be mixing it up with those that are more experienced, those that make a living driving race cars. So, you know, you think about the progression for Jeff Burton. This is just more lessons to put back in the memory bank.
It is, and I think for any AM on a Pro-Am lineup, it's all about minimizing the mistakes. I mean, so many of these AMs can have good one-lap pace, but doing it consistently and not making that vital error and suddenly losing 5 seconds or more with an off is really the key. So sometimes you can get the red mist in a racing where you're going side by side or in a brake zone with someone, but it can also just be a lack of concentration when you're running by yourself, having to hit your marks and get that lap time.
So many big names in these cars right now. Colin Brown, Robbie Foley, Bill Auberlin, all driving. Brian Sellers, GT3 champion in his own right. Trent Hidman. This is a collection of some of the best GT drivers in North America that now will test themselves here in this second qualifying session. Colin Brown putting that car through its paces. He's been a busy guy this year, racing everything from prototypes to GTs, even a couple of IndyCar starts earlier this season.
Yeah, very versatile, great speed. So mature now. I mean, we think about him being Team 16 back when he competed at the Rolex 24 for the first time, and now just rock solid and great chemistry with his group. Has been with George Kurtz for many years now. They work so well together.
Championship last year, of course, with George in the Pro-Am ranks here in Fanatec GT. So he's won titles in LMP3, in Prototype Challenge. He's won a championship at the Asian Le Mans Series. He was the NASCAR Truck Series Rookie of the Year back in 2008, even won a Truck Series race on the Big Oval in Michigan as part of the Ford development driver
Foley to
team.
the top. We talked about maybe that time by Alice might be tough to beat. Well, Foley's within a couple of tenths early in this session, so that Turner Motorsports BMW has come alive here. Right Motorsport there, there's Elliott Skier behind the wheel. They swept both classes here last year, in fact, in Pro and Pro-Am, so they have great history here at Sebring in the 12-hour and certainly our SRO events as well, so they have a really solid platform. Porsche seems to do well here.
Wrapped up some championships around early here at Sebring in previous years, have Wright Motorsports, but this is the fastest car on track right now. Robbie Foley for this Turner team that he's been a part of now for a number of years, a 159.4. That, as Calvin said, is about 2/10 off of the new track record that was set by Philip Ellis back in qualifying 1. Keep in mind, the cars have to have enough fuel for both qualifying sessions coming in to the morning. They can't add fuel in between, so you do typically see faster times in the second session as that fuel burns off and the fresh Pirelli P0s go on.
That's a great point, and it's very relative. I mean, weight is all about speed. You're not accelerating such mass and having to slow it down. So if the car gets a little bit lighter with less fuel on board, but Elliott Skier just went a new fastest first sector there, as Foley is not quite as quick through his first sector. It seems like the Turner Motorsports guys in their engineering squad have really got that Turner Motorsport car to come alive very quickly in the run. That comes down to your starting tire pressures and things like that.
This is Elliott Skier, and that great first sector. Sector looked pretty strong too. Here he comes. Let's check the times at the line. We recognize we don't have the graphics on screen, so we'll update you on the standings.
Skier to the
top by less than 1/10 of a second. It's Skier, Foley, Brown, Oberlin, and Verhagen. Here comes Foley. Can he answer back? He does not. Goes just a hair slower, in fact, so he still is second. No improvement either from Neil Verhagen in the trailing ST Racing BMW just behind him.
BMWs look good, though. They got 3 cars up in the top 5 right now, with Foley being the fastest of that group. Oberlin down in 4th, Verhagen 5th. Overall, that is, not in class.
Rest of the results to this point. Sargent in 6th, Hinman 7th, Lee, Sellers, and Veach the top 10, then Povoleto and Burton. Well, George Kurtz drops a wheel, and wow, what a save from Elliott Skier.
Well, Brown was a little bit wide there, not sure if that caught Elliott off by just kind of focusing on him, and he missed his mark, but that was a big save as he's now cleaning things off, so to speak, with his tires and maybe more.
Was that a tire change for Verhagen? If you touch the car during the session, you lose the previous times.
Maybe that's a strategy. Maybe they went out on some scrub tires and now they're putting a fresh set on, so his tires will have to be reset. But could this be a little qualifying roll of the dice, and maybe it could give him the speed necessary to move further up the chart?
If that is indeed the case, Neil would be forfeiting the 5th fastest time yet in this session at a 159.9, one of just 6 drivers across the 2 sessions to go sub 2 minutes.
Plenty of time to go. We've still got 7 minutes on the board, and we've seen these times come in very, very early in this session. So track will be rubbering in. Obviously, you're factoring that against, you know, ambient temperature going up, but you've also got the fuel weight coming off the car, so lots of things to balance out there in the equation.
So many variables in this game as we watch. Colin Brown here had a great first sector. Not sure about the second. How about the third? It's not good enough to improve. He's still 3rd fastest, 2nd in the Pro-Am class at this stage. That's not a surprise, I guess. We saw him with that moment dropping a wheel right there at the exit of turn 1 on that previous lap in the replay.
Yeah, Skier had a big cool down lap. He's got to get a little reset. That's about as wild as you can get without losing the race car. That was a brilliant piece of car control.
I mean, he was pointed straight at the barrier on driver's left.
Yeah.
Yikes.
I don't think they have a backup chassis any longer because they had a major hit at Long Beach just a couple of weeks ago with their other car.
A few teams in that position. The GMG number 32 that Tom Sargent currently has up in 7th place.
He's been super impressive for GMG. Actually headed first practice
correct
this weekend alongside Carl Washington coaching him, and he's really done a great job with Carl. Carl's found a lot of pace this year.
And Kyle had an issue in GT America practice yesterday, backed the car into the barrier. That car had to be withdrawn, but it sounds like they're going to run this chassis in both races today and tomorrow. A lot of pressure then to keep the nose clean, because 2 championships could be affected by an incident, not just 1.
Yeah, it's a big gamble, but I mean, Kyle just wants to run, he wants to race, he wants to get to the lap, so made a little mistake. He said, I just pushed too quickly on new tires yesterday in that practice session and lost the rear end going into turn 1 back to in and just crunched the rear end. Not able to get that chassis fixed here on site. Thought they were going to withdraw from the class, but they elected to pull double duty with this chassis.
Update from Amanda on the Neil Verhagen situation. Indeed, ST Racing sent Neil out on used tires for an install lap, made that switch in the pits, and now he's on a push lap here with just under 5 minutes to go in qualifying 2. Keeping an eye here on Tom Sargent. Pretty fast in that first sector, it looks like. Second sector looks good too. This could be a decent lap here for the Aussie.
Off. I think he's bailing for pit lane. Yeah, I think he was starting to slow there towards the end of that lap. I think he may feel he's done.
Into the pits he goes.
This is where the focus is, right here.
Correct. Connecticut native Neil Verhagen. He's done most of his racing over in Europe. Part of the BMW young driver lineup for a number of years, and now promoted to a factory driver for the Bavarian brand. And he's pushing here on sticker tires.
Personal best, Sector 1 and Sector 2.
It's looking promising
It is
for
looking good.
the ST Racing driver. Remember, they had a great weekend here at Sebring last year, only to lose the results to a technical infraction post-race. But Neil, in many instances, was the star of that show. Here he comes to the stripe with 3.5 minutes to go, and Verhagen goes to the top. Philip Ellis's track record remains intact, but Verhagen has ST Racing on the provisional pole position for race 2.
Yeah, and that's going to have all the other teams scratching about that scratching their heads about that strategy. So great job there by John Miller and the whole ST Racing group to think about that and pull it off as well. You can have the driver confident enough with minimal time to go out there and lay it down, but see if he keeps cranking here when the team says enough's enough, just save those tires for the race.
Sister car of Bill Oberlin is doing just that. That's the report from Amanda. Bill was pretty happy with his lap. He's 5th fastest at the moment, 2nd in class, and they are trying to save those Pirellis for the race. So with 2.5 to go, let's give you the running order for Hagen, Skier, Foley, Brown, and Oberlin, the top 5. Then it's Hinman in this, actually that's not in this car, that's his old car from a few years ago. Old habits die hard. Hinman actually in the RS1 Porsche this weekend. Then Tom Sargent, Brian Sellers, Andy Lee, and Zach Veach, who we're right on board with in the Racer's Edge Acura. Aaron Povolato, Jeff Burton. That's the top 12. In fact, that is the field of 12.
Yeah, an update on the debut of that Chevy Corvette with Brian Sellers. He's 8th, 2:03, so basically just under a second off the fast time of the day. I think they'll be reasonably happy with that. Love this section of the racetrack, heading down to Tower Corner. Get parallel to that curb. 65 miles an hour. Some cars will use 2nd, some 3rd through there. Minimum speed 65. Then you're winding up through the gears through Bishop, flat out through here. Touching about 145 before you get to the brake pedal here. Love the rhythm through here. That's a key corner. And it's time to tighten up the belts and get brave.
One of the toughest corners you've raced on, right?
Absolutely, so challenging. You just never feel you go through the corner exactly the same time 2 times in a row, because look at those bumps that he's encountering right there, and he bails. Would assume on his predictive that it wasn't quite there, so he just elects to hit pit lane.
10th fastest for Zach Veach and Racer's Edge. With that, I'm not sure how many cars are still on track. It looks like Aaron Povolato is. Neil Verhagen thinks it's job done. Big smile in the cockpit there and a thumbs up to the cameras. Neil would be on the Pro-Am pole. Elliott Skier currently holds the Rova pole position in the Pro class and would start on the outside of the front row. This is the Canadian, Aaron Povolato. Had a good first sector, not sure about the second. Let's see what he can do here into Sunset Bend. This team that's making the jump to GT3 racing for the first time after a number of years campaigning in the GT4 ranks.
He needs to find about 3/10 to jump over Zach Veach for P10.
Not able to do it. That lap at a 2:02.1 was a couple tenths off of his previous best. The checkered flag is out, And it looks like the lineup is set for race number 2. Neil Verhagen at ST Racing. There's his co-driver, Samantha Tan. She'll love this. Elliott Skier second. Foley, Brown, and Oberlin are the top 5. The track record was set back in the first qualifying session by Phil Ellis, 159.217. That was not eclipsed here in qualifying 2. So Philip Ellis continues his run of form at Sebring. Again, remember, he won the 12-hour earlier this year. Now he's got the SRO GT3 track record at Sebring. I think you might like this place.
Yeah, very much so, but great job by Neil Verhagen. Very sharp strategy there by ST Racing, so kudos to them for thinking about it, thinking everything through. And that's what you have to do. I mean, it's so tight. Everything's tight in terms of finding that little edge. As I said earlier, I mean, it's not impossible to win from deeper in the pack, but track position is always key. And, you know, you get in some of these fast sectors through here, a little bit of aero wash will stop the cars that are close behind you from making a move.
Top 8 in qualifying 2, separated by less than 1 second. Shaping up to be a fascinating race tomorrow. And I think interesting, too, Jeff Burton, 12th fastest as we expected in this group, but he's not that far off of some of the other cars in this class. That bodes really well for that alternate strategy for regulator racing. Back down to Amanda.
And John, I talked to you about sending Neil Verhagen out on those used tires and then coming in for the stickers. A little bit of a time constraint on him, but why did you know that Neil would be the perfect one for that?
Yeah, Neil's a rock star around here, and we've been working really hard on kind of extracting the one-lap pace out of this car. We feel like we've got a pretty good long-run pace in the car, but the one-lap pace has kind of eluded us. So we've tried a couple different things, and we wanted to give Neil a chance to feel the track and then put him on fresh tires to go for one flyer, and he got it done. So fantastic job to the team. Thanks to Neil and Sam, and Varun and Bill also did an awesome job, so super happy with where we're starting today.
The secret might be out now on that.
We tried it a couple times last year, and we'll do it again if we have to.
We'll see race day.
Yeah, thanks.
What do you think, Cal?
I like it. Yeah, I mean, you know, there's enough time. Traffic wasn't really going to be a factor with other drivers bailing, feeling they've got the sweetness out of their tires. So it worked, but you got to have someone who's confident and just go out there and put it absolutely on the line with just a couple of laps to really work with.
John Miller, of course, a really good driver in his own right. He and Samantha Tan have a lot of racing planned at the Nürburgring later on this year, a couple of NLS races, and I think they've got some designs on maybe trying to do the 24 as soon as next year from talking to John. That would be really cool. She's done some of the big races now around the world, and she'll be racing in GT4 European Series powered by the Rafa Racing Club in the support race for the 24 Hours of Spa this year too, which I know she's really excited about.
Yeah, really cool, and she got some good GT4 experience at Long Beach a couple of weeks ago with that platform. She hadn't run the new M4 that debuted last year, so that was good experience for her. But team's really doing a great job. I think when you do have an ex-driver racer leading the charge like John Miller, it is an advantage. I'm not saying it makes a big difference, but I think you can certainly understand from the driver's perspective what they're feeling, what they're needing, and have a bit more empathy from that side. And I think it definitely can give you an edge.
John wanted to make sure we knew, though, he's not done driving.
No.
He's not just a team manager. Yeah. He's got some big plans on getting back into the cockpit, as we mentioned, alongside Samantha Tan here in the days to come and weeks to come. So, highlights from qualifying 2. Busy leaving the pits, but ST Racing electing to go with the different strategy. In the early going, it was Robbie Foley, Turner Motorsport, with the quickest time. The car he shares with Justin Rothberg, Colin Brown, and Elliott Skier. These two pretty close together, but boy, they nearly had a coming together right here at the exit of 1.
Yeah, that was wide. Colin was wide there. I'm not sure if just Elliott missed his mark, but that was a great catch.
Certainly was. This, though, was the story of qualifying, with Neil Verhagen going out late on a set of sticker Pirelli P0s. He takes pole position for race number 2. That's coming up on Sunday. Race 1 of the weekend later on today here at Sebring.